Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, a show for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. Each week, we bring you real-life stories and expert insights to help you create a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, a physician with over 2 decades of experience blending Eastern and Western well-being practices. As the founder of Radiant Living Institute, I'm here to help you reconnect with your own inner radiance. Remember, small changes make a large impact, and it all starts here. Please note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast. I am absolutely thrilled to be in the podcast studio with my dear friend, Emanuel Perez. We have, just forewarning here, disclaimer, we have the best conversations. Emanuel is one of those people who, when I run into him, it can easily turn into a 2-hour conversation. We will try to keep it a little bit more concise than that today, but I am so excited to dive in and just give you a little sneak peek of the types of conversations that we have, the depth and the breadth. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. But first, let me give a little bit more of an introduction of who Emanuel is. So Emanuel is a startup founder. He's an innovator. He is a visionary. We initially met 2.5 years ago in, I believe it was January or February 2023 at this beautiful co-working space where we are at. And actually, you were giving a presentation.
I was.
At a program called 1 Million Cups, where entrepreneurs present their businesses and their startup companies. And you were sharing about your company, which you were a co-founder and CEO of, called Novus, which is a startup that used AI to protect non-technical and elderly people from email-based phishing attacks that went on to win one of the top categories for the Black Ambition Award. Is that correct?
We did. Yeah, we won $50K for the HBCU prize pool.
Wonderful. Yeah. So exciting. Just a highly achieved innovator and startup founder who now recently started another venture called Explay. And that's a bit of what we're going to dive into today. Explay is a creative lab to act as an umbrella where he can launch all of his ideas, no matter what. You know, all of those things, those setbacks that can stand in our way. Well, he wanted to create a space where he can launch his ideas no matter what situation. And he describes this as his own experimental playground to blend the childlike passion and adult discipline together into creating. So I'm so excited to have you here on the show, Emanuel.
Thank you, Dr. Sheetal. It's an honor to be here. And I'm super excited to dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. So Emanuel shared with me recently, today he's going to share a bit more about his own, an aspect of your personal self-care journey. And just last week, I believe it was, you shared with me a manifesto that you had written recently, which was really describing a series of events that led you to creating Explay. And so I have pulled out here some notes from that manifesto, which was so beautifully written. I will include a link in the show notes as well, so all of our listeners can go take a peek at that. Trust me, it will touch your heart and your spirit. So definitely check that out. But I have pulled out some sections of it that we'll dive deeper into. But to get started, can you set some context for the manifesto? What led you to write it? What were some of the series of events that led you to create Explay?
Yeah, so creating the manifesto, it was just something inside of me that was going on for this past 100 and so days, past 3 months of me starting to Explay, how I got started in the first place, and the things I've been trying and learned along the way. I truly feel like writing is the best way for me to release my thoughts and to understand myself better. And it also activates a really good aspect of critical thinking. So diving into that manifesto, before the backstory behind it was a car accident happened this past January. I was driving and this truck came flying out of nowhere and just sideswiped my car. And if I had been turning, I was turning into a left turn only lane. Had I been turning any faster, it would have been really dangerous. And so myself and my passenger were both okay. My car was missing a couple teeth, but it was just a blessing to be alive. And it made me reflect on all the ideas, all the things that I had yet to bring into life that I wanted to so badly, but just kept procrastinating on, kept pushing off to the side, kept, oh, I'll do it later, um, kept burying those things, and my soul felt this sort of angst and neglect. And at that moment, afterwards, I had time to, decompress, think about it. You replay the scene of traumatic events over and over again. I was like, okay, I gotta do something with this. Like, I'm still alive. God put me here for a reason. I gotta do something with this one beautiful life of mine. Like, why was I dimming my light in the first place? For what? And I really wanted to make use of the light I have within me. And that led to creating Explay.
I love that. So, first of all, I am so glad to hear that you and the passenger who was in the car with you were safe through that accident. And it sounds like that event really made you think about your life a bit differently and kind of give you this sort of a sudden shift in perspective in a way. And one of the things that you wrote in the manifesto that you just described a bit of as well that I really resonated with was you wrote specifically, the ruminations of things I wanted to do but halted on began to haunt me. They wouldn't stop tugging on my soul. And I can just resonate with that so deeply. I know for many, many years, I have had this tug on my soul to do really much of the work that I'm doing now, actually all of the work that I'm doing now. But I attempted in many ways to dampen it because I felt like that was not the traditional path that was expected of me, not the traditional path that a physician takes. And so I tried to honestly quiet that and dampen it quite a bit. I gave it some room to express itself while I was practicing medicine and building my business as well, but honestly, not to the fullest extent. And there were times, because let's face it, building a business can be hard. It has its ups and downs. And so there were times that I even tried to, dampen that. Like, wouldn't it be, and I'm not saying it's easy to be a physician. It is definitely not easy to be a physician, but I would almost tell myself, wouldn't it be easier for me to continue to follow this traditional laid out path for me than it would to create this business? But the fact is that it wouldn't stop tugging at my soul and I couldn't dampen it down. So those words that you specifically used in your manifesto just really resonated with me. I'm going to say it one more time. The ruminations of things that I wanted to do but halted on began to haunt me and wouldn't stop tugging my soul. So where did that lead you to next?
That led me to putting in my 2 weeks notice at my past job, actually within the next few days after recovering. And I was like, I'm going to take the leap again. The first leap of faith I took on my first startup, Novus, didn't quite work out. Went at it for a year and a half and had a crazy downward spiral that you and I have had many conversations about. I'm super grateful for those conversations too. And now this time it's like, you know what? I survived the first leap. I didn't survive the second leap too. And it's like, I kept thinking, and I'm a man of faith, so I thought about, had I gone to see my maker, meet God at the gates of heaven, and he's like, what did you do with the gifts and the talents I gave you? And yeah, those might be seeds, but you feel when you have those seeds, like you mentioned earlier, like you don't want to dampen that gift, that light that you have, because the best way to let it out is to truly just let it out. And I think in my mind, I was just so concerned about survival and is this really going to work? I don't see any other examples of these people or ideas or things taking shape, but and maybe it's up to you to do that thing. And so it was really a mirror pointing back at myself after that event. Like, what am I going to do now? Yeah. What am I going to do now? It's like, all right, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. We spend so much of our life, and I'm speaking kind of generally, as many of us, just generally as many people we tend to try as much as we could, as I described on my own journey too, of sort of fit into a traditional mold or what's expected of us or a certain path that we've seen laid out before. But the fact is, we were all put on this earth for a specific reason, with specific gifts, with specific talents, with specific quote unquote perceived weaknesses. This is something that Ayurveda talks a lot about as well. Ayurveda, the ancient medical system of India that I've studied as well, that talks about us as being completely unique. And why are we completely unique? Because there are specific purposes that we are meant to fulfill in our life. And I think a lot of people, even as I'm saying it, I do want to be cautionary, because I think a lot of people can get hung up on that word purpose too, of thinking that they need to be able to clearly articulate what their purpose is or clearly define it, or that it has to be some really big, large thing. But that's not necessarily the case. It's just showing up each day in the unique ways that you show up, really. And so, you know, as you were sharing, Emanuel, it made me think of a couple of things. So I ran into you in this co-working space. I think it might have been right around the time that you had given in the notice after the car accident. And you had said something to me. You said, you know, I'm just betting on myself again. And I'm taking that leap, and I feel like I need to bet on myself again. And I love that phrase. It's a phrase that I had told myself when I left clinical practice, and I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do. It was before I decided to dive in fully in the work that I'm doing now. But I just said, you know what? This is a time that I need to take that leap. And it really does feel like a leap. There is that uncertainty. There is that sort of unsteadiness that you can feel. And at the same time, when there is that tug on your soul,
Right.
that keeps tugging, sometimes you just need to listen and act on it. And so that's what we both have done. And we've talked quite a lot about kind of taking those moments of really betting on yourself. And what you also described of really fulfilling all of the talents that you've been given in your life, that makes me think of another thing that you had that I jotted down here that was written in your manifesto. And again, it was just so beautifully written. I want to read that out loud and share that with our listeners. So what you wrote was, I pondered about what I would have regretted more had my time on earth been cut short. A, living empty because I was frightened to try something and fail, or B, living full while creating something I'm proud of, no matter the results. Living life fully became my answer. I decided when my time was up on earth that I'd give God the biggest smile and proudly say I squeezed every last drop of talent he gave me. That section just really, really, really touched me and really touched my heart. And speaking of that, I want to actually go back to just a small phrase that you had said when you were describing your work with Novus, which was the first startup that you were working on and had founded when I first met you. And you had said, you know, that one didn't quite work out. I would beg to kind of challenge that a bit, because I think that, you know, again, no matter the results, you brought this idea, this creative idea into fruition. You brought this vision to life, and we always learn from our experiences. And there was something else that I had written down here that's somewhat related to that. Oh, yes. You had written in your manifesto, making mistakes means you're making progress. And the worst mistake you can make is making none at all, because you will never attempt and therefore never grow. Before we go on, I'm excited to share something that could really make a positive impact on your life. Do you feel like you've lost touch with your true self? Reclaim Your Radiance is Radiant Living Institute's signature coaching program designed to help you reclaim your worth, renew your energy, and restore your happiness in your life, career, and relationships. This 6-module program has already helped countless women regain control of their lives. Whether by setting boundaries in challenging relationships, finding strength through life transitions like divorce, pivoting in their careers, or rediscovering their purpose as they embrace new chapters of their life. Start your journey today and begin living authentically, unapologetically, and radiantly once again. Head over to radiantlivinginstitute.com/reclaim-your-radiance to get started. I hope you found that helpful, and if you're ready to explore this more, check out the link in the show notes. Now, let's jump back into today's episode.
Absolutely. That moment for me writing was revealing. It's like taking my guts and pouring it all out so I could see it exactly for what it is. So I got to see the parts where, I was BSing, the parts where I was telling the truth and looking at the truth for what it is myself. And I think when I was able to do that, I was able to course correct even now because I wrote it, I believe, last week or about a week and a half ago. And it's helped me to course correct. And I think that where the truth lies, where I was afraid to make mistakes. I was afraid to fail again, due to survival and due to, oh, but what if I put all this effort in sunken cost fallacy and I don't get the results I achieved? So I've given business in the first place to achieve a certain result. But there's also this other, on the opposite angle or adjacent to it is art. And it's like, if there's something that's inside of you, it has to come out. And I think what you were saying earlier, thank you for correcting me too about my past art, because the oldest game in the world is Mancala. I'm not sure if you ever played before, but it's when you take the seeds in pits and you have to drop it across. And I feel like life is like that game. We take the seeds and you have to keep spreading them across. And so each experience isn't linear to your journey, but it somehow connects like a constellation of some kind. And everyone's is different and unique. And so for mine, I knew that, oh, wow, well, I have no idea where these new projects are going to go. I want to work on film. I want to build new app ideas, but I don't necessarily want to take the same path I took last time by raising venture capital. I want to, go directly to the consumer and see what happens next. And so it's almost like, the Snoop Dogg or Rick Rubin approach that I feel like I'm taking now, where it's like, launch stuff and see where it goes. Is it risky? Kind of. But is it rewarding? I think absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, there's a few things I want to reflect on what you shared. First of all, I'm just kind of like giggling to myself at just how life works, because you just said the word sunken cost fallacy, and I was on a client meeting earlier today, and I was completely blanking on that phrase, and I said it's something fallacy, and this is exactly what it means, and I can't remember the name. And so it's just so funny how life works, because now literally 2-3 hours later, we're having this conversation and sunken cost fallacy. So I just am giggling to myself at that. But that's a bit of a digression. What I wanted to really reflect on is a few things. One is this fear of failure. So many of us have this fear of failure, and that ends up being the biggest thing, the biggest mindset that keeps us stuck. And I can share with you, when you were describing when you decided to step away from Novus and there was this downward spiral. And at that time, it was so interesting because I was on a similar sort of downward spiral. And a big part of that for me at that point was related to this fear of failure, of diving into my business and seeing, okay, I don't know, I'm not really quite seeing this manifesting in the ways that I expected or would have hoped. And what if I quote unquote fail at this, and what does that even mean, right? And that was a season of my life of really redefining and understanding what success looks like for me, because that is something that we all have the opportunity to define for ourselves. So I just wanted to mention that a bit. And then another aspect during that time, actually, during that very same season of my life, I had already created this podcast. And this podcast is something that, for our listeners, if you don't know, primarily the momentum and fuel for it is simply that I really enjoy doing this. I, at this point, don't earn any direct income related to this. There's really no other reason other than I love having these conversations and I love sharing that with you. And so during that time, I had to really just step away from, does this make sense or not? And I had to follow what gives me any ounce of joy. And this podcast was one of those things. But just like you were saying, it can feel risky. And you don't know how it's going to turn out. And you don't know if maybe in sort of quote unquote real world, it makes quote unquote sense or not. But it is really interesting. And this is a journey that myself, you, a number of other entrepreneurs and innovators, friends who I know have decided to embark on of tuning into what gives us joy and following that and trusting the process.
I think there's nothing sweeter in life than doing exactly that. Because I think on the fear part, fear of failure, I think it's fear of identity. Is it the thing that I'm attaching my identity to? If that breaks, then what else is left of me? And versus I took a step back and it's like, wait a minute, it's not really about me. It's not like it's about the work itself. And that for me is the self-care part. Is like, can I put this into fruition? And then whatever else happens next is just the cherries and the whipped cream, the salsa on the top. Don't want to mix those ingredients together, by the way. But like you said, for your podcast, you're going on 2+ years now, and you have no idea how many lives you've touched because of it. And that's the beauty of art. You don't know who you're going to impact or what you're going to impact or what is going to result because you decided to stand up and take the light as within you and let it shine. Like that poem by Marianne Williamson, Our Deepest Fear, is one of my favorites. As you let your own light shine, you give other people permission to do the same. And that's something I want to do with Explay. Like I want to, if I put, my own soul on Explay and put it out there and give people permission, as I'm giving myself permission to explore and play and to experience and play and experiment and play and all the EXPs, I'll hopefully other people and other adults mainly, hopefully will be able to do the same thing. Because I think as we get older, we start to lose that childlike passion that lies inside of us and that fervor. And I think letting that die would be a huge waste of one's potential.
We're almost, as a culture, conditioned that that's just what you have to do. That's what being an adult is. But not necessarily. Not so, right? Not completely. And so you naturally kind of segued into something else that I wanted to talk about today, which was how you created the name Explay. So you mentioned express, experiment, explore, experience, and play. And I love that. And so I'm going to read this section from your manifesto. So Explay was born. It's not a real word. I love how you wrote ChatGPT reminded me of this many times, but wordplay is something that makes me happy. So who cares? So I'm just pointing out that line right there. It makes me happy. So who cares? I mean, some of these things, it's like we get so stuck in our minds. I am totally guilty of this as well, but we can get so stuck in our minds when it's just like, goodness, but this makes me happy and it's not a big deal. It's okay. This is something I'm creating. I can create this. It's okay if it's not a real word. But then it got even more interesting when I was reading your manifesto, because then you wrote, over a phone call, I mentioned this to my best friend, Miguel. And he told me about the Spanish word. Can you pronounce it?
I think it's explayar or explayar.
Okay. And then the connotation meant, thank you. The connotation meant something along the lines of expanding yourself, taking up space, and doing you. So you just created this word.
I did.
Out of all these words, express, experiment, explore, experience, and play, kind of combining that together. And then come to realize it is a word.
It is a word.
That means exactly what you're doing. Expanding yourself, taking up space, and doing you. How cool is that?
It was so cool. I was on the phone with Miguel. He was dropping game. He was like, what? Say that again? He was like, yo, I think I heard it before. So he was talking to his girlfriend. They were talking in Spanish. I have no idea what you're talking about. He was like, bro, you got to hear this. And it was just a full circle moment. Like, oh, wow, I am on the right path. Like you said about trusting the process and trusting your own process that's inside. It's like you have this puzzle you have to figure out. And it's up to you to put the pieces together in the way that you see fit. But if you try to copy someone else's playbook, you really won't be authentic and genuine to yourself and to your own life's calling. And I think it would kind of be unfair. So I think learning how to unlearn, like, oh wow, I'm naturally wired to see examples and to come up with ideas, but sometimes maybe it's my turn to be an example for someone else to gain inspiration from later. Really funny how life works.
Yeah, it is. And life is always giving us I believe that life is always giving us these signs too. And so it's just a matter of us being awake and open to them and aware of them. And so just like this example with your friend and the name of Explay, like
I got to shout out Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. Yeah, when he made Granity Studios, great, and Granity standing for greater than infinity, I was like, huh, that's the coolest thing ever. And you know, some of those seeds that you gain from people that you listen to or things you're inspired by just take a little while to germinate.
Yeah. And that makes me I want to reflect on a couple of things as we start to wrap up today's episode that I'm going to read from your manifesto. One of those is about this, what you just said about kind of seeds that you pick up along the way that you wrote. You didn't write that in at least the section that I took note of in exactly that way here, but it speaks to it a bit of some of the things that we've been talking about in our conversation. And that is, I have no regrets about going on side quests. Side quests exist to give you experience you can apply to the main quests. So that just to kind of give value to those sort of projects that maybe don't go completely to fruition as you would have expected, right? Like we were talking about earlier, but they still have value. And then I also like how there were so many of these sort of beautiful metaphors and gems of wisdom in this, but there was also a directness because you said nothing will ever replace doing the thing like doing the actual damn thing. And so I loved just kind of hearing that directness too. And then I think the piece that I would like to wrap up today with is what you had also written in the manifesto, which is that as you wrote, quoting you, as I began to leap, the ground rose to meet my feet.
It did. As that same week that I quit my job, like the next week after, I got a call from a director at the NSU Innovation Center that's saying like, hey, like, you know, you want to be a key holder, you know, kind of you want to be an entrepreneur in residence. I was like, wow, I lost my office space, you know, at Assembly after leaving my job, and then gained a new one for free. And I was like, that's kind of crazy. And then I had different opportunities coming my way. I picked up a camera and wanted to do storytelling and falling into putting myself to learn I've always wanted to learn how to work a camera and lean into cinematography and doing voiceovers and becoming a really good storyteller. And it's that path got opened up through more opportunities. And it was like, wow, this is, as I'm starting to take these risks and go after the things that really excite me, the opportunities just come my way, or I can create them. And I'm still learning how to do that because it's very nonlinear. And most of the time it doesn't make sense how they come, but that first step is taking the leap.
Yeah.
And for me, the main quest items were the step towards where I'm challenged and I'm fearful and I'm really curious. When those three items tend to intersect, I'm like, okay, I know I'm on the right path here. And when I'm not doing those things, it's like, okay, these are side quests, they're easy, this is fun, da 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 da. I think the main quest can't be fun, but it's like, this is really pushing the needle forward for what I want to do and for the things that are inside me to really let out. But the main quest everyone has their own type of rope that tugs at your soul and at your spirit to push your work into fruition. And for me, I know it's like when those items tend to intersect, it's like, okay, this is the thing I should be doing. Like, this is making me sweat. This is making my heart, you know, pick up speed and feel like it's about to come out of my chest. This is the thing I should be doing. And I think it comes down to that sense. I think it gets easier the more you do it because you become more familiar with the feeling. Do the nerves ever go away? I'm not too sure. But I know that if you feel it, it's a good thing. It means you're alive.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's exactly what you said. You get more familiar with that feeling of following your light and allowing it to shine. And I love that because that was actually also something else that I had highlighted, which was I spent most of my time learning by doing things for other people, comfort zone, and not the things I really want to do for myself, challenge zone. Where fear and curiosity intersect is where my North Star lies. And so I think we'll wrap it up here with that.
Okay.
As I said, Emanuel and I can easily chat on these topics for a couple hours, but out of respect for your time, dear listeners, we will start to wrap up the episode and then we'll probably be chatting here for another hour in the studio. But Where can people learn more about you and stay connected?
Sure. My personal page is at Emanuel Perez. Creative Playground, Experimental Playground's website, Explay, is at EXPLAY, explay.ing.
Perfect. I will leave those links as well as the direct link to your manifesto in the show notes below. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I know you have so many choices for how to spend your time, so I thank you for being here today with Essential Self-Care. As a gift, download your free workbook, 6 simple yet powerful steps to create your radiant life at radiantlivinginstitute.com and start your journey to a more radiant you.